One thing I'd like to mention tonight is one of our attendees here, Tor Stoutland. He is the founder of the News Forum. I hope you watch the News Forum. It is available on all of the cable networks. And the coalition actually has a regular show on it called Canadian Innovators. A number of people here. What's that? The kids show. The hit show, Canadian Innovators. I said the kids show. I would like to be the kids show because I think we need our kids to be a lot more informed about these kind of issues. In any event, but Tor, thank you so much. We so value the media. We know the media is a big mess right now for all kinds of reasons, but Tor has doggedly pursued a small c conservative perspective, and he went through the CRTC process, which is kind of like the 7 stages of hell, I think, and got common carriage, the thing that you want to have, to be on all these stations. So I just wanted to mention Tor as well because he's promoting the good fight. Well, I'd like to make a few remarks just on the coalition and what we've been up to the last year or so. Tonight, I'd also like to say that tonight we're partying like it's 2019. We have not changed our prices since 2019. So I hope you appreciate that. One of these days we're probably going to have to because, as you know, everything's going up. But tonight we decided we would stick to the same price regime that we did in 2019. And one of our, we were so fortunate tonight to have 2 courageous leaders, as premier leaders here with us tonight. They have both taken stances that are against the zeitgeist, maybe against the woke hordes, and they've in some instances been punished for it. But I think to see that kind of leadership at the provincial level, when we sure don't have it at the federal level, is extremely refreshing. And one thing that the coalition has always focused on is the notion that our country is interdependent. It frustrates me all the time that I'll talk to some people, and granted, they're not maybe policy geeks like I am, but I'll talk to people in Ontario, say, and Trudeau just did something really rotten to Saskatchewan, but hey, doesn't affect me. Oh, yes, it does. And that's the kind of message that we need to get across, because ultimately everybody votes, or not everybody, not enough people, but surely we need to get that message across of how interdependent our country is. And when we see a federal government that discriminates against certain parts of the country, we all hurt. We all hurt because of it. And we need more awareness of that particular situation. The busiest year ever for the coalition is the one that's just passed. We have made so many submissions to various parliamentary committees, boards of inquiry, pre-budget parliamentary committees, all kinds of stuff on the climate, energy, net zero, all of those subjects that are so prevalent, unfortunately, now, notably at the federal level and at some provincial levels as well. Things like the carbon tax and its evil twin, the clean fuel standard, electrification, electric vehicles, regulatory issues, and a few international bodies as well. Actually, we made submissions to some international bodies that are working to impose standards on Canada, but they're being devised by a body that we don't vote for ever. Some of that is UN, some of it is international financial standards, accounting, and so on. We conducted a major plastics campaign back in April this year with the help of some of our board members. I don't know if you know, but the United Nations, about 4,000 United Nations delegates came to Ottawa. And the fact that it wasn't picked up much by the media, which it was shameful, of course, because it should have been. How many massive UN meetings do we have in Canada? Not many, thankfully. But it was, the goal, of course, was to find ways to ban plastics, which is an absurd, totally absurd goal. which has all manner of factual, scientific reasons not to do that. I know we've written a lot of opinion pieces in newspapers, published a lot on important topics. I was actually in Calgary last week, and I was at an event with Stephen Harper, and we were chatting. And he said, you know, Catherine, people keep sending me your columns. So I said, good, that's good. That's what we want. We want the word to get out there, and that is so very important. It was interesting. One of our award winners last year, who sadly couldn't join us tonight, was Jamil Javani. And Jamil, of course, is now a member of Parliament, and he invited me to go to his swearing in as an MP a little while ago. And he had a little celebratory sort of reception in the evening. And I remember being there and speaking to some folks I didn't know, and they were asking me what the coalition was all about, because they weren't aware of us. And it was very intriguing, because one of the people in our little circle that was talking was actually a very connected lobbyist in Ottawa. And she said, well, the coalition, they were against the carbon tax before it was cool to be against the carbon tax. And I thought, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. And I think, too, something I should say to our guest premiers here tonight is, we have an unblemished record at having our award winners who are running for office or running for some particular, whatever it may happen to be, they always win. 2 years ago, we had Pierre Poilievre speak, and he wasn't the leader yet. That was before he was involved in it, of course, but that was before the actual leadership contest took place. And lo and behold, he won. We had Danielle Smith here last year, and it was prior to her being elected. She was the leader already, but she had never actually been elected as the premier. And lo and behold, she won. I've already mentioned Jamil Javani, and we also had Roman Baber here he's here tonight too. And he won one of our awards last year and is now the Conservative candidate. So we got a pretty good record, guys. I think you're okay. Okay, I think you're good. We're batting 1,000. We want to keep doing it, so please don't mess it up for us, okay? One thing I want to mention is our magazine, our CCMBC magazine. We've started to do a regular magazine monthly. I know many of you get it electronically, and frankly, we only distribute it electronically normally. I actually had some copies printed out tonight just for this occasion. And you'll find them on your table. I just had a few little examples just to give you an idea. If you don't get it now, please just go on our website, ccmbc.ca, and you can sign up for it. It's free. It's a monthly publication, and we feature all manner of issues. Our last one was on Canadian competitiveness, which of course is a pretty big deal these days. And we had a special one, by the way, our plastics campaign I mentioned earlier. We had a real great plastics campaign where we went to Ottawa. We were in the face of the UN people that were there. One of our colleagues said he had never seen so many communists in one place before. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, our plastics magazine I've distributed here tonight. But if you do want to receive it, please, like I said, go on our website, sign up. It's free once a month, and normally it's only digital, it's only electronic, but I did have some printed out. And if you notice, some of the things on it are kind of big. That's because you need a certain font when you do digital stuff, so everybody can read it okay. But then when you actually physically print it out, it ends up being rather large. So if any of you have any vision issues, no problem with the magazine. It'll be just fine. But yeah, please do sign up. I've had other business groups say to me, do you mind if we distribute this? I said, nope, let her rip, get it out there. And we've had a lot of really great feedback. And I want to actually thank one of my colleagues who isn't here tonight, Kathy Leal, for her skilled production and design and the nice design features and whatnot of the magazine. We've also featured a number of other authors that aren't coalition affiliated directly, but what's interesting is a lot of them have massive followers on social media, and of course when they have one of their articles in our magazine, they pump it out all over the place. So it's been a real winner. We're going to continue it, so please subscribe. We've mentioned a little bit about education. We have a group, we call them mamas because there aren't any papas there just yet, but we don't have any problem if papas want to join. But we have a group of women extremely concerned about our education issues. Sue Ann Levy's here tonight, for example. She's written for a very long time on the massive mess of our public education system, what our kids are being taught, how the basic things that parents want kids to be taught aren't being taught, but they're all being turned out as social justice warriors. And of course, these are the employees for your business in the future. These are our future politicians. These are our future leaders, presumably. And we pay a lot. We pay a lot for education. Let's not fool ourselves. Although the unions always complain, we pay lots when you look at international comparisons for our unions. So we see things like gender identity issues dominating the curriculum, critical race theory, this kind of thing, and exposed to kids that are very, very young, inappropriately so. And our two premiers here tonight, I am delighted to say, have taken very courageous and often challenging stances on these issues. In fact, they've been leaders in Canada. They've been leaders in Canada, and I know what's interesting, of course, is they come out and all the woke, warriors attack them. But then you do a public opinion poll of parents and average citizens. They support these initiatives, as they should. So that's a pretty important consideration. And I tend to think, because of the leadership of our special guests here tonight, we're starting to see the pendulum swing back. It takes a while for parents to understand what's going on. Of course, we can't all be paying attention to everything that's going on in our kids' schools every day. But the pendulum's starting to swing back. We have a long way to go yet, for sure, but it started and it needs to continue. I also want to emphasize the fact the coalition doesn't take 1 cent from any level of government, none. And I believe that we are the only business group in Canada that does that. I truly believe. I know there's some research organizations and whatnot. I'm on the board of the Fraser Institute, for example, and I know they didn't even take a dime in the pandemic because they felt so determined not to take government money, and good on them for doing so. But I think that is why your support is so incredibly important. So many business groups have half of their budget paid for by government. And do you really think that they're going to fight for you? Do you really think they're going to fight for your issues if half of their budget is based on government money? Of course they're not. And it's frustrating for groups like us, because then when we talk to politicians, they say, oh, we've already heard from business. No, they haven't. They haven't heard from business. They've heard from the toadies that are relying on them for their money. And that is not the business position that they should be hearing. You may have seen Pierre Poilievre did a very interesting column. It was quite controversial, actually, in the National Post about, a month and a half or so ago. And he really teed off on lobby groups that he said they were coming to him saying, what are you going to do? And this particular context was the recent capital gains changes. But Pierre said, well, a lot of business people and, lobby groups, et cetera, were coming to him and saying, what are you going to do about this? And according to him, he went back to them and said, no, what are you going to do about this? And that was a very good answer, because so many groups like to spout a certain position, but they don't really support it. They don't put energy, resources, et cetera, into actually changing that kind of policy. He also, in this column, and if you haven't read it, I'd Google it and have a read, because it was quite an interesting column, actually. He actually named a bunch of the business organizations, chambers of commerce, big business organizations, that he felt he really didn't want to meet with ever again. Which, if he is the next Prime Minister of Canada, that's going to be bad news for these business groups. Well, he didn't mention us, and you know what? We don't have any trouble meeting with Pierre. And I am quite confident that will continue to be the case. One of the smartest things Trudeau did, and that's a very short list, by the way, was bribe the media. Bribing the media was a masterstroke. I doubt if he thought it up. It has butts written all over it, as far as I'm concerned. But if you want to see the impact of government money on any organization or sector, I think you only need to look at our so-called legacy media, our so-called mainstream media. They won't say a word against Trudeau's policies because they want their subsidies with our tax dollars. And those subsidies are reaching epic proportions, by the way. I thank goodness for Rebel Media and other independent media. True North, we have True North represented here tonight. We have Tor at his news forum. And, we need them desperately. But, of course, it takes a while for them to get established and, really get a voice out there. But it is happening. And the good news is it is happening. But, you can really see that government money is just a cancer. It's just a cancer on these organizations. And the fact that you can't get your message out, it's so hard to get your message out now if you are not agreeing with the Trudeau policy. And that's a disgrace because the role of the media has a hugely important role. And right now, most of them are not fulfilling that role. One thing I want to say in closing, we're going to hear from our two special guest premiers tonight. But one thing I'd like to say is that Premier Higgs in particular is in quite a tight election race. He's been in for 2 terms, and the third term is always more challenging than other terms. And interesting enough, New Brunswick is one province that actually permits out-of-province political contributions. Most provinces don't permit that, but New Brunswick does. And I think we all have a very important interest in having such a good conservative premier like Premier Higgs re-elected to continue to show his leadership across Canada. He's been a national leader on things like fiscal policy. He's got balanced budget. That's something in Canada these days. Parental rights in the education system, the flaws in our equalization program, and other issues as well. So I just want to say, if anyone feels so inclined, I'd encourage you to contribute to his campaign so that his strong leadership can continue. I don't want to leave you out, Premier Moe, but that's a New Brunswick kind of thing, it seems. So I'd just like to close, actually, with a few memes. That I like memes. I always think a picture deserves 1,000 words. So I'd like to turn to the screens, and I have a few memes to show you. Yeah, this capital gains thing, the total fiction that it only affects the ultra rich is precisely that, a total fiction. And this is just one manifestation of it. We know that it affects doctors, professionals, all manner of average people that either have a second property because they don't have a public sector pension, so they actually need something to fund their retirement and so on. And I just really like this as a classic example of the capital gains. Now, of course, Trudeau, after about 9 years-ish, and the budget amazingly has not balanced itself, so now it's time to tax the hell out of everybody, and that's what we're seeing right now from this government. Now, this is the whole climate issue, of course, is a massive consideration, but this is kind of what's happening these days. Once again, the pendulum's kind of swinging back, and a lot of people are starting to question. They originally sort of bought into this whole hoax, because it is a hoax, and it's predicated on dishonest, wrong information. But this kind of thing is happening, and hopefully will continue to do so. Now, the whole EV craze, which our government has spent zillions of dollars on, I mean, over $50 billion has been spent to date, and I'm sure there's going to be more, on EVs. But as we know, unfortunately, they tend to blow up real good, as John Candy used to say. But on the other hand, there are some efficiencies, because you could have a Tesla hearse and get cremated on the go. So there may be some efficiencies involved that we want to factor into our considerations. The World Economic Forum, as we know, has influenced many of our federal government ministers and others recently. And of course, the irony and hypocrisy is always that they want to pay net zero taxes, and they will do so while having the rest of us eating bugs. This is an interesting one, given the socialist predilection of many of our young people these days is that some guy with a beard is going to give you stuff for free. Well, yeah, Mark said the same thing. A lot of you are employers. I suspect you can relate to this slide, because it just seems that having some really basic, like please show up on time, is suddenly a massive requirement, that onerous requirement of employees. Housing, we know housing is a fiasco in Canada, and yet we still have immigration rip snorting at record levels. And my son Alex, who was singing earlier, he bought a home recently, and I sent this to him because, of course, it's a pretty tough housing market these days. This is another issue I haven't touched on yet, but boy, what a mess has been created by the cowardice of police forces, governments, and mind you, I kind of excuse the police because they're getting their orders from governments about what they can do about all these outrageous, ridiculous protests that we see. It's very interesting how a lot of the leftists who previously were climate warriors have now turned into terrorist supporters, because that's what they are. They're supporting terrorists. And just for the record, the coalition has worked with an organization called Secure Canada to, first of all, inform people better about the issues involved. And, you know, as people say, oh, is that really a business issue? Well, if we don't have a secure country, it sure is a business issue. Can you imagine if you're a business in some of these areas where these ridiculous protests take place? And you know, of course it affects your business. So we need to stand firm. We need to encourage our governments to do the right thing, clear out these absurd, absurd occupations or whatever you want to call them. And our institutes of higher learning, sadly, are aiding and abetting them, which is an utter disgrace. And again, on our tax dime. I really like this slide because, you know, it talks about all these apocalyptic movies, and and here we are right in the middle of it right now. And I think that's pretty accurate, We're at a very interesting time right now, internationally, domestically, and there's a lot of real challenges to what we believe in, which is democracy, freedom, free speech, and rights for women, for LGBTQ, for anybody, reasonable rights. And I just felt this slide was very good at kind of describing that. And finally, we have a U.S. election later this year, where we have two totally challenging candidates. And I don't know if you know the history of Joe Biden's dog, but apparently the poor thing bites everybody. And they had to banish him from the White House, the poor thing. I'm sure it wasn't the dog's fault. But in any case, I just want to close on that note and thank you once again for your great support of our organization. Hopefully you will continue that because we're fighting for all of the issues that we all hold dear. Thank you.